Hi, everyone. As the last few folks are getting settled, welcome again to C3 and our first panel session on stage 2 today. I'm Sarah Corbett, Senior Manager of Account Management here at Conductor. I know Jenny just gave us some brief introductions, but I'm excited today to be here. I'm going to try to go in order of how everyone's sitting versus my card. Marc Choquette, who's the Director of SEO at Boston Globe. Eric Brown, Demand Generation Manager at Datadog. Partho Ghosh, VP of Product at Uberall. And Sacha Goureau, founder of SELG Consulting. We have a great discussion coming up around winning strategies to enhance visibility in the age of AI search. So thank you so much for joining us all today. Throughout the conversation, we are going to be discussing the tactical playbook for winning AI search visibility, from restructuring your content strategy to advanced optimization techniques that actually drive results across ChatGPT, Perplexity, and many other LLM engines. So to kick us off, I figured I'd start with the first question. I think as everyone in this room knows, AI search has changed the game for visibility. I'd love to hear from the folks on the panel to what's the one single biggest shift you've made to your strategy to show up in the engines I just mentioned, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and any other AI search experiences. Sacha, I'm looking at you across the panel. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, is this working?
Is this thing on?
Thing on? Can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for having me. The one thing I think that has been a shift for us is no longer optimizing for keywords but for conversations. And so we saw some examples there, right? Like Google was more about like single keywords optimization, quick, finding the answer that you're looking from the question that you're looking for. Here, we're going much deeper into the conversation, and so that's one key area that we're looking at to make it more robust and dense in terms of the quality of the content that we have. And so that's something that we're paying attention to for sure.
I'm coming from the product side, so what we're seeing with a lot of our customers, Uberall is a local kind of platform, so we really focus on local search. But the biggest thing we're seeing really is understanding, obviously, the prompts that are coming in. We tell all of our customers that's the first thing to look at is like what are people asking, especially a local level question, and then answer back in that way, whether it's listicles, FAQs, just the content strategy and content generation should be around that. My jokey answer to like all the different conversations that I'm having with customers is Reddit. Like Reddit has to come in and be a big conversation. That's kind of the big one that everyone asks about. But yeah, I think the content generation piece around what are people asking is the biggest shift that we're seeing as a whole, our customers.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. So when I started at Datadog, we'd had very strong visibility for our product-oriented searches and brand and all that, and our non-brand visibility was what we struggled with, right? So I spent a lot of time building out non-brand content, definitional stuff, bringing people in, and that's almost immediately changed. Where now we really want to think about how are people speaking about our brand, how are they comparing us to competitors, how are they evaluating us, and so the content is really right back focused on that type of I guess, branded-oriented content.
Hi. Let's see. For us, I would say the biggest thing that was a big shift we saw was just in terms of how our portfolio of sites are crawled by a lot of these LLMs. So when AI search started to really become popular, a lot of publishers, ourselves included, really we I don't want to say we overreacted, but a lot of publishers really just work to like block everything, block all the bots. We've been burned by platforms before, so they took a very cautious approach to it. And one of the things we did about 6 months ago was we revisited our Robots.txt file just to understand like, okay, what are all these bots we're blocking? What do they do? There's a great site called Dark Visitors that we used. And basically, one of the things we're seeing is that as these LLMs evolve, they're becoming more nuanced in how they crawl, and they're using different bots. So whereas before, Perplexity was using one bot for an assistant, the same bot to train, and now we're seeing more nuance where like there's a specific bot that OpenAI has to retrieve information based on a prompt. and that's separate from the one that's used to train its LLM. So, we still are taking a cautious approach with training. We don't want to give away all of our content for free to be trained on. But if someone is prompting us and want to know about the Boston Globe from a prompt in an LLM, like, we do want to be able to show up there. We think that visibility is important. So for us, it's really just trying to become a little more nuanced in how we control who can crawl us and why.
Yeah, different industries have to think about the shifting landscape a little bit differently, which kind of leads me to my next question around the tactical steps you all are taking. And I'd love to learn a little bit from each of you around how you all, in the work you're doing, are restructuring your content strategies specifically for AI search. I know, Sasha, you mentioned going from keyword to conversation and prompts, but with your teams internally, are you creating net new types of content, reformatting your existing assets, or are you rethinking the architecture completely? Are there any specific concrete changes that you've made to ensure your content ultimately gets pulled into AI responses?
Okay, I'll jump in. Interestingly enough, the example that Seth showed of the review from 2015 that is giving the credibility of Conductor on the LLM is a great example of, if you don't own your brand, AI will own it for you. And I think that has been translated into, let's look at the content that we have and see how we can AI-ify that content with FAQs, expertise. How do we pull in different parts of the organization to come in to really check all those elements of the algorithm, essentially, so that we can be there for how consumers are, one, searching for the products and their and answers, but also how do they continue throughout the conversation and what comes up within the conversation. So it might start with the best shoe, but then there might be an FAQ within that content that we created that answers specific question that addresses specific concerns from that consumer. We took the approach of, instead of saying like, hey, we need to create like new content for everything, let's look at what's working well today within the principles of search and SEO, and how do we add in layers of AI-ified signals for LLMs.
I think, from what we hear from our customers, really the biggest piece is obviously how fresh the content has to be, how consistent it has to be across all the different platforms. We've seen different, let's call it branded search, especially on the AI side with ChatGPT and with Claude, how quickly you can, quote unquote, let's not call it rank, but how quickly you can be not part of the AI share of voice if it's not consistent across platforms. And it's just a lot of work if you're doing this manually and you haven't set yourself up for automation and obviously using AI tools yourself. And that's the biggest thing, is it's a meta world right now. We see so much content that's being created by AI for AI to read. It's a really funny situation. But I think making that content as human as possible and proofreading it, and that's what we're telling our customers, like, while we want, obviously from a product point of view, we want AI to be able to do all of it, you should look at it. Don't just blindly trust it. And if you're seeing that things are you're still not, improving your share of voice, or citation rates not going up, it could be consistency as an issue as a whole. So that's a big one for us.
I think it's also interesting, not just making sure that the crawlers are reading your content, but the right content. So Mark, you mentioned the different crawlers, right? One thing we did at the start of this year, when we really started seeing traffic from these engines ramp up, is we went into our logs and within our Datadog platform itself built a dashboard of all of these different bots and crawlers, and understanding, what pages are they looking at? Is it the foundational model? Is it the user retrieval, things like that? And that's allowed us to understand how the bots are crawling, how we can better optimize certain pages. But we also, and like on a really technical or tactical note, found that one of our staging sites was accessible to Claude's bot. And so it had crawled it millions of times. And this was for our documentation. It was stuff that could be out of date or not quite right, because we're not the final version of the content. So we took steps to block that and make sure that we see a lot of people ask, how do I do X in Datadog through these platforms? And so that was something to make sure that we were serving the right answers.
Yeah, for us, we don't, at the Globe, we don't have a we don't have a content production or visibility or originality problem. We publish like 200 articles or plus per day. So we are experimenting with different formats. A little bit here and there, not necessarily tailored to AI, but more so like trying to improve the overall user experience. I would say the one thing that I've learned in terms of like how we need to shift our strategy is really on the technical side of things. Like a lot of these LLMs are not good at crawling the web. Like I know that there's been statistics out there around a Claude or I can't. What's their parent company's name? Yeah, Anthropic. Sorry. The crawl to visit ratio being way out of whack, and part of that, yes, is because they're not sending as much traffic. The clicks are harder to get, but part of it is also because they just crawl very inefficiently. We see a lot of 404 pages that get requested by those bots, and Google also is much better at crawling JavaScript, for example. So I think one of the things we're really working on is making sure we have more and better schema markup in place. Our site performance is really strong. Everything's server-side rendered. Kind of like, it sounds kind of obvious, but a lot of the nuts and bolts of just, good technical SEO. I had an old boss to like put the cookies on the bottom shelf, like make it as easy for them to access this as possible and retrieve that information. So, that's kind of what we've been focused on.
Yeah, I like that cookie analogy as a personal lover of chocolate chip cookies. But I think, Marc, what you just said about like schema markup in particular, if anyone's listened to any of Pat Reinhardt's recent 30/30s, I'm sure he's mentioned schema at least once. But one of the other things, Partho, that you brought up is around, if you're not seeing results, like maybe there's some sort of issue with whether it's consistency or something else. As you all have been, shifting your own strategies, and I'm sure talking with colleagues and peers in the space, what are some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing across organizations as they are working towards AI search optimization? Marc, maybe start with you, given the large quantity of content Boston Globe Media is producing daily.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's so much hype around this right now with the AEO, GEO. Like, I'm gonna caution everyone to like pump the brakes a little bit. And I was just doing an analysis for our senior leadership team and like looking at, okay, like if you factoring in all search platforms, like where is our traffic still coming from? And it's, it's still almost 90% Google. LLMs are like 0.1% of our traffic. So, we can, and like that number is going to go up, obviously. But I think that like, we have to, I'd just say maybe not buy into the hype as much. Because like, another thing we're seeing, like I'm getting outreach from so many of these AI tool vendors, like Profound is one that reaches out to me a lot. And there's so much VC money like getting pumped into these companies right now. So I think it kind of reminds me of like some of the early days of SEO. Like I've been doing this kind of a while, but like, where it's like everyone, if anyone says that they've solved answer engine or GEO for you, like red flag, because we're all still figuring it out.
Yeah, it's funny, the winning strategies. I think like we're all trying to win, and nothing's won yet. Like it's constantly evolving. The mistake, going back to your question, is on our side, and looking at some of the trends that we saw of like impressions going up but clicks going down. It's like, are we telling the whole story with that, or should we layer in the engagement? Because one could argue that if you have more informed decision, you're coming to the site with an intent, and perhaps that engagement is higher, the conversion rate's going higher. So focusing highly on traffic is maybe no longer relevant as much as focusing on the quality of the lead that's coming to your site, because they have had that upper funnel consideration phase. So it's interesting. Like, and does it mean like websites are going to be more like lower funnel? Perhaps, but we still need the content to rank in those LLMs. And so this is where like the winning strategy is still like question mark around how we win. But on the shift, I would say it's important to look at all the story to tell the quality of the leads coming on the site.
I think like you had said, like it is, when we looked at some of the data from like, I think understanding your business is really important, obviously, for B2B platforms, especially like in tech and B2B SaaS. Like, I think AI search is probably more prevalent, but we see other companies where it is like it's 0.1, 0.2. It differs so much based on your context. But the other big piece that I've really noticed as a whole is just folks, like the biggest mistake is forgetting about the SEO side. Like, Google is changing based on all this stuff, and whether they're reacting on the defensive or on the offensive side, they're changing, and they're going to change based on that. And I think not looking at what they're doing and reacting to that more so than AI search might hurt you more in the short term, in my opinion. I mean, recently we saw, SERP pages go from 100 results to 10. Like, that's a huge impact, and that's just done in the defense, in my opinion, of obviously how LLMs are crawling Google. And so that's the big thing that we've been talking to a lot of our customers about is we obviously want to be on the hype train from the technical side of like we want to get folks hyped up and build in the hype, but it is important that the Uberall as a company has been around for like 12, 13 years, so it's like we got to look at what's the actual changes that matters. And yeah, we're all learning. I agree wholeheartedly. Winning strategy is kind of funny. It's like, here's what's winning this week. We'll see what happens next week, in my opinion.
Well, but see, I might have to maybe go the other way because, again, I am in the B2B tech space. And so for us, we certainly see more than 0.5% of traffic coming through. It's under 10%. But we also see that users that come in via ChatGPT or Perplexity are primed to convert at significantly higher rates than through Google because, yeah, they've done their research through these tools. And so what's being replaced is that more upper funnel content. And it's having that story where you can still have, all right, maybe we don't need to get them in with a guide on how to do X, Y, Z, because they're looking at best observability tools, comparing us to competitors there. And when they come in, it's more about focusing on, how do we build the pages to guide them through that process, knowing that they're primed to convert. So I think, potentially a mistake could be thinking that because it's a small slice of traffic now, that it won't grow in the future. We see many months where it's 20% month-over-month growth in terms of referral traffic from these services, and so far there hasn't been a slowdown. So
we're about 30% ourselves. So it's so funny seeing it on the other side, especially local business that we deal with. Literally less than 1%, 0.1 to 0.2 is not uncommon, but it's growing. That's the one thing we definitely see.
Well, what could be interesting in the future is how do you target this audience that comes from LLMs? How do they behave on your site? How do they behave to your retargeting marketing? Like, are we seeing different behaviors from that segment versus others? It might be interesting as we continue, like the winning strategy will evolve with that consumer.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. And even just being able to track, how do we tell that someone did their research in an LLM and then came to the site directly too? That's a huge problem to solve.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the 0.1% data point is for just one of our sites. I mean, other sites, the numbers look wildly different. And, some of our sites are going up, some of our sites are going down. But one of the things that I've noticed is that like the sites where we do a lot more original reporting, where we're doing more content production, where there's a strong originality to the content, those are the sites that are doing really well. The ones that have historically relied on evergreen, relied on lists, relied on these things that are much more risk prone to LLMs kind of eating it up, we are seeing much more of an effect on those sites.
For sure. It sounds like a lot of what I heard in that little discussion there was, we can't completely forget about, the foundations of SEO, but also that some of the mistakes we're making are not actually thinking about the future and how, while the industry and the landscape has shifted a lot already, it's going to continue to iterate as AI becomes more prevalent. So we have a little under 2 minutes left. I think the one thing I'd love to chat through last with you all is, in this quickly evolving landscape, what is the one thing you're investing or experimenting with right now that you think over the next 12 months is going to, pay dividends and matter most for the sites that you work with?
For us, I'm working with a large CPG client that signed Conductor on July 1st, and so I think getting the right tools to have that visibility and getting an understanding of what's happening. There's a quote that says you can't manage what you don't measure. That's really applicable here as well. Like Google Analytics was like that too when we launched it with another CPG client I worked with years ago. But it's like, get the visibility of what's happening. Where is your brain today? What are the conversations about? I would encourage you to also be the user. In the room, we probably all use ChatGPT to some extent. Like, go through that experience yourself and try to find if your brain shows up, or who's showing up and how they're showing up, and what's their content like for them to be able to show up. So I think as users first and consumer first, we can put ourselves in those shoes to go through the journey, and then reverse engineer the journey to understand how, as a brand, I would want to compete with that field.
Yeah, I mean, that is data first, right, is important. And there are tools, and obviously we're Conductor's event, there's Conductor as well. And to first see what those prompts are. My easy answer is in our own product right now, outside of investing into more around AEO and GEO at a local level, I joked around before, but we are building Reddit as a social channel just so people can post and content and build more brand in Reddit. And it's surprising how many folks just don't see it as a channel. And demographically, I know it used to be very male dominated, but it's actually equalized quite a bit now. So that's the big thing that we're building out at the moment and investing in.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, a big thing we've been working on is just trying to understand how are these services crawling our site? What are they looking at, and how can we, take this content of knowing what pages they're frequently crawling and serving up, specifically in the kind of the user agent when it's referring a question, and then looking at that with Conductor, right? Understanding the queries, understanding how can we think about what people are asking, what pages these crawlers are looking at, and putting that data together to optimize and improve those pages, to improve those answers.
This is going to sound counterintuitive in a room full of SEOs, but lessen your reliance on search platforms as a business. Just the volatility that we've seen over the last couple of years, I think, just shows that building your business on top of search, like search is an important part of our acquisition strategy, and that it's going to remain that way. But what I've actually been advocating for a lot internally, and Partho, you might appreciate this as a product guy, is like investing in our product. Building direct audience through product, and at any given time, we have a 70 to 80% of our visitors on bostonglobe.com are direct. So the more that we can build that direct audience, the more the volatility that's happening within the search space we're buffeted from a little bit. And I know that's not maybe practical advice for everybody. Just publishing is a bit of a unique space, but yeah, investing in product tech design, like it's something that I think is really, really important, and also helps with search too.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, Marc, Eric, Partho, and Sacha, I appreciate you all taking some time to talk with me today around the strategies you all are incorporating into your own lives and work. For everyone in the room, if you have any other questions for any of these gentlemen throughout the day, they'll be around at various breaks and stuff. So yeah, enjoy the next session.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.